Andy. How's it going?
Nice to see you. I've not seen you for quite a long time. I always start out this thing by saying to someone, I've not seen you for quite a long time. Usually it's like 50 fucking years, you know. But we're a bit. The last time we saw each other, we went to the Tate Gallery, I believe. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I thought didn't we do that thing going up north?
Oh yeah, and we did that. With
that guy that was living around here, and he was providing the transport for us. And we got there like 3 hours late, and everyone had gone except one person.
That was a wasted journey, wasn't it?
It was. Although, you know, it was probably more memorable in the way we did it than if it had all gone really brilliantly.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the whole thing about ETA to me is that it's always been a bit of a shambles. You know, it's like someone said after we did that gig at the Acklam Hall, that was our last gig before I next played, kind of thing. And someone said to me, "Oh, why don't you do this punk festival?" Like about 6 months later, why don't you do this punk festival probably up north somewhere? And I said, "You don't want." I was at the Acklam Hall, and it was a bit flat. You know, the audience was a bit flat. You want to go out on a bang? And I told him that no, actually, usually things fizzle out quite well for you.
Yeah. Well, that's like T.S. Eliot quote, isn't it? Going out with a whimper rather than a bang.
Yeah. Well, it started with a whimper as well, with the gig you didn't play at in Manchester.
Yeah, exactly.
It was really the worst gig ever, and yet people now talk about it as though it's some legendary thing. I heard guy from New Order, what's his bass player, Peter Hook, saying, "Yeah, I was at the gig. It was fantastic." And I thought, fucking hell, I don't know what aspect of it was fantastic. Sandwich throwing, maybe. But
I
anyway,
think people look back at those things and they actually are looking at it through today's lens often, aren't they? And they're kind of thinking, well, it was fantastic because I was there. You know, it was fantastic because there was nothing else quite like it. You know, there weren't any other gigs where, you know, the audience would throw sandwiches at you, you know, as a sign of disapproval. And why were there sandwiches?
People in Manchester, they carry around sandwiches in case they get peckish during the day, I assume.
Yeah,
comes from the chimney sweeping days.
It's definitely a kind of unusual approach to gig going, isn't it? Bringing a packed lunch with you.
Yeah, I mean, I wish you'd seen that gig, because that was. I'd like to get a proper appraisal from somebody that was there, and I've never done that yet.
The way I think about it is, I can imagine you on the phone to, like, you know, Pete Shelley or someone like that saying, "Oh yeah, we're a really you know, upcoming London band, and we want to kind of come out of London and play," even though you hadn't actually played ever, and him probably thinking, "Oh, I can probably tap this guy up for you know, all the money to hire the hall, and we'll get a gig out of it," you know. And
that's ultimately what did happen. But actually, I mean, they wanted us to support once, because we were looking for someone to do posters, and this Manchester company that had something to do with the Buzzcocks said, "Why don't you get the local band, big band, to support, to headline?" And we said, "No, it's our gig." And so if they want to do it, they can support us, which was the worst decision ever made, because you get blown off stage before you have a chance to be useless. But
I think that happened to us at the Roxy once, didn't it? Where the Damned were looking for a somewhere to go and film a video, and because we owed them quite a lot of favours, we said, "Oh yeah, you can come and do our support slot at the Roxy Club." And I think that was the night that Brian was going to wear that nurse's uniform, and he ended up giving it to Captain Sensible.
He chickened out.
Out, and obviously Sensible just lapped it up.
Become iconic, that nurse's outfit.
Yeah,
that was Dave Goodman's. You know, he was going to visit his girlfriend the next day, and he was bringing a nurse's outfit because he got turned on by her wearing a nurse's outfit. that is actually why he had the nurse's outfit in his bag. So
yeah, I never knew the story of how it arrived there.
Actually, talking of stories of how things arrived, I was talking to Wobble, I think it was, we were talking about how the pig's head arrived. And I know TV Smith it was, because he later had your stepdad as his advert security. Why they needed security, I'm not sure, but he was. How did so he wasn't, I thought he was a butcher, but he wasn't, he was a milkman, right?
He was a milkman, yeah.
So
no, he liked this dish called brawn, where you have to boil a pig's head for 24 hours. And what you eat is the residual that kind of like falls off the pig's head.
So he already had the pig's head.
Or yeah, it was in the fridge.
Just knew where to get them. I was in the fridge.
And I think I just sort of thought, well, it would be a really good thing to do. And then I think I might have spoken to you about it. And then the next thing, it was on a sheet of polythene on the stage of the Roxy.
That was a great idea, and that's another thing that I'm not sure about, because Don Letts, apparently, someone told me, I never remember him saying this, that he asked us to do something outrageous, and so Charlie said, "Oh, I'll get a pig's head." But I think we just did everything off our own accord, and we just came up with mad ideas and didn't really have much direction in that front.
We'd done something like it at the Hope and Anchor. We had like this polystyrene head, like one of these hat kind of like stand heads,
right?
And I cut the top off of it and put a bag of tomato sauce in the middle of it.
Oh god!
And then we whacked it with a hammer. I think that night we probably overdid it a bit at the Hope and Anchor. Maybe. Because I think we like vomited baby food and we had blood capsules and
didn't you even have your pastry drumsticks that you started eating?
Probably. And I think you had a load of Monopoly money that you gave to the crowd.
Yeah. Another time I had a pocket full of flour, which I then threw all over everyone. And then Slaughtering the Dogs nicked that when they played the Roxy. Did that at the Finchley Manor gig. Talking of which, what are your recollections of that Manor gig? What did you make of all that? Did you know that I hadn't even got permission? Did I already tell you that? Or
I think at the time I kind of like just assumed that everything would be okay.
Right.
And was that that was quite early on, wasn't it?
That was November 76, yeah.
Yeah. So that was probably one of our first gigs with me as the drummer, wasn't it?
That was the first gig with you as the drummer.
Yeah.
And it was totally different to the original drummer, my brother. It suddenly became a good band, after you joined. But it wasn't a bad turnout, was it? For a school gig that was miles away from it.
If you think about it historically, it's pretty stellar lineup, really, wasn't it?
Well, now it's I suppose a historic lineup. I thought
it'd be interesting now. I keep saying this to people. A lot of what we did back then just couldn't happen now. Some school kid couldn't go to his to the caretaker and say, "Oh, can you let us in? We want to do this gig. Well, we want to do this rehearsal," which just happens to have other bands kind of like at it,
I told him that we had I told him we had a few mates coming down.
Yeah, and you were selling tickets somewhere. I don't know where you were selling the tickets, but you were selling them.
Once the Damned management took over the advertising for it, they had all that sorted.
Yeah,
I think although it had Brian's phone number in the advert, so maybe people were phoning him. I don't know how people got there. I don't even know how they put up with it saying nearest tube Woodside Park, which is like fucking 5-mile trek on foot away from it. But
that is one of the things I always remember about coming to see you, because obviously when I first met you, I think I came to a rehearsal in a London rehearsal studio.
Tracks.
And then when I came to visit you where you lived, I thought, this is not London. This is kind of like as far out of London as I live, and you have to walk for kind of half an hour from the tube, through all these leafy streets and things,
it was Finchley is the real suburbs, or it was. Everything seems to be getting dragged into being Greater London now. But yeah, that first time, like, so when we had that rehearsal that Rat Scabies came to with John Ingham, and Rat said, "I've got the number of a drummer. You've got to get in the band." Did he mention that to you before I contacted you? Did you know I'd be calling you?
I think I did. Yeah, I think I was expecting it.
How did he build? I'm interested to know how did he build that?
Because he used to come to the house at the weekends and bring a bag of washing and have a dinner, and we'd play the drums for a little while. And he just said to my mum, I think, "Oh, I've met these kids who are getting a band together, or they've got a band together and they need a drummer. You know, would he be able to go and do a audition for them?" And of course, my mum was like, sort of, she wasn't like any other mum. You know, her idea of like kind of care was, "Oh yeah, let's get my son into a punk band."
Yeah.
You know,
at 13.
She had a kind of completely different sort of like value set, really. You know, like her idea of education was taking me to, you know, Glastonbury or somewhere, you know, or making sure I ticked off all of the great bands, you know, to you know, and if I didn't want to go to school, she didn't, you know, make me go to school, you know, that kind of stuff.
Your mum and my mum are a little bit similar in that sort of way, because especially about the school thing. And
I think there were a lot of similarities, because I think your mum, by the time I met you, was single. My mum was kind of, you know, she was married to Charlie, but she had spent a lot of time like on her own before that. So, and I think, like you mentioned it before, we were both like quite poor, but we weren't like poor in the sense that if you went in the house, there were like books and records and, you know, encouragement, you know, to do stuff.
Right.
But, you know, there wasn't enough, there wasn't money, you know, like for sort of anything lavish. You know,
yeah, I know what you mean. Having the book, because my mum always had books and paintings, and she was into photography and all of that. So that sort of part of life was normal to me. And so was being poor and not eating properly and all of that kind of thing. And then when you go to school, I just go around to my mate's house, and they're like parents together, and then nice middle class pad with a colour TV, and everything's tidy. There isn't like dog shit in the corner and stuff like that. Fucking hell, you know, not everybody lives the same.
No.
But I found you did. When I came around to your place, it was comforting, very comforting to me.
Do you remember me staying in your house for about 3 days without your mum knowing I was there? That was funny.
Yeah.
Every time she came up the stairs, I would like be hidden under a kind of pile of clothes or something. Or I managed to kind of like be there like without her even knowing, and you would kind of like go down and come up with like a lump of bread or something that you'd salvaged from tea, you know. And I used to go down to the telephone box and ring my mum and say, "Oh yeah, I will come back. I will come back." She kind of knew where I was, but
I actually hid from my mum all that time that we bought that acid from that hippie at the Roundhouse. I hid from my mum all that. She thought I was at school when I was tripping up out of my fucking head upstairs for the whole day, and I had to sneak down and raid the kitchen and stuff when she went out. So she wasn't always that aware of what was going on with me, I must admit.
Your house was massive though, wasn't it? Was it like about 4 floors or something?
3 floors.
3 floors, but I just remember it being really, really big, you know, and like the rooms being kind of like, well, if we were upstairs, you know, no one would know what was going on downstairs.
Yeah, that was the great thing about it. I mean, I think you said once that, you know, when you saw my house, you thought, oh, these guys must be rich. And it's quite the opposite of that. But the house was a nice house, a nice old Edwardian house that the council owned. And so that's how we got that. And that you had the right to buy, she could have bought that for fucking peanuts. But because it was of that mentality that the council will always look after me, kind of thing, she didn't, and I fucking resent that slightly today. Got to admit it. So your mum was a kind of hippie, is that right to say?
Yeah. And so was I guess, because, you know, the choices that you had like then were, you could be a skinhead or a suede head or a hippie, you know, and I was more like drawn to that than the other.
There was also the plain old lads, though, wasn't there? Sort of soldier lad sort of thing.
Yeah, with like sort of Oxford bags and
that's it. The baggy,
feather haircut, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Probably the most outrageous band that they liked would be the Sweet or something like that, you know.
Yeah, you were really into Gary Glitter, I remember, because you often wore that Gary Glitter T-shirt, and you'd often sing butchered Gary Glitter lyrics.
Yeah, well, it's an age of innocence, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, we didn't know, did we?
He was. I remember seeing in some like magazine the story of how he met his wife, you know, and the sort of great love he had for her and everything, which was like a cover, I think.
Right. I don't know. I mean, I don't know on the scale of famous paedophiles where he ranks. I don't think it's anywhere near the top, but yeah, that was it was a very dodgy time, wasn't it? The 70s. There's like, I think we got propositioned a fair bit by I think one famous punk singer whose name we won't mention even, and it just seemed to be like, you know, that's what goes on, and also when you're a kid, you don't want to be treated like a kid, do you? And so you don't think, oh my God, you know, you're hitting on a child. You just think, oh, he thinks I'm a grown up, or thinks I'm grown up enough. Do you know what I mean? There's an innocence to it.
I think from our point of view, there wasn't that kind of awareness either, you know, that there might be like people who were like predatory there.
Yeah.
You know, I kind of like, it's interesting because when you look back at the whole scene, we were like thrown into it, you know, and we could have fared a lot worse than we did. And I think probably what saved you and me was the fact that we were a bit streetwise, at least, and we
enough to say fuck off if somebody.
Yeah, and we could get out of situations, you know, with humour as well. You know, which I think kind of stood us in good stead.
With your mum, she was quite actually into the scene, wasn't she? She used to come to the gigs and.
Oh yeah. She was pretty much everywhere.
Did she think we were any good?
I'm not really sure that would have even entered the equation. You know, in her head, you know, she was just having a really good time.
Right.
And like you were saying, she was like part of the whole scene, and people knew her, and, you know, like she didn't necessarily have to be like hanging around with me, you know, or hanging around with the band, you know, like, and
yeah,
she would go to gigs on her own as well, particularly when like Charlie started working for the adverts, and you know, like if they were playing, you know, she would go and see them, you know. And I think I think she was quite canny. I think she was quite suspicious of the label and Caruso after she'd met them. And I think she got more kind of anti it when she saw the sort of results as well, because I think she thought that we could probably be doing better than we were doing. You know, we could have been selling more records. We could have been, you know, getting better gigs or whatever. You know, it's like almost like the opportunity that we had. We were too young to really realise and utilise it, but the adults around us didn't seem to be able to realise it and utilise it either.
Yeah. Even signing the contract with the label, I mean, we never got anything from that. We got ripped off completely.
That was that would make such a great film scene. Do you remember? It was snowing. We were at your mum's house. A taxi pulls up. Caruso comes out with some contracts and says, "Look, I've really struggled to get a taxi because of the snow. Can you just have a quick look at these?"
Just fucking sign them, will you?
And just sign them. And then we went out for some Chinese meal, I think, you know, like a couple of days later, where all the parents.
It was a Greek meal in Muswell Hill. Yeah. And I thought we were rich, you know. We got given 100 odd quid. I thought, fucking hell, hit the big time here. And got very drunk at that dinner. And I remember if you went to the loo, right next to the loo was a room where they kept all the wine.
Oh, right.
So there was like extra bottles always being brought back from the toilet visit.
I remember us ordering cigars, which is just something I think I've probably seen other like bands do when they sign record deals. The cigar was probably taller than me.
I think Caruso was quite good with mums and that, and talking, you know, or was it Dave? But between the two of them, they could talk anybody into anything. And I think they kind of, even Brian's parents, you know, his mum was dead against it all. Even she thought, "Oh, that Dave Goodman, he's all right, really, isn't he?" But
yeah, they were very skeptical.
So when you met Brian and Ian, when you knew the setup, what did you think? What were your thoughts on this bunch of boys you just met?
Well, I think when we started playing together, we were a band. You know, we could play, and we could get a set together, and it felt like there was the potential, you know, to be a band, you know, be a proper band. So I think I just got carried away with that, you know.
I mean, it did work. I remember the first rehearsal, just sort of, it was a bit rough and ready, but it just clicked. This is, as you say, this is a band. We've got a band now, and that was quite a moment for me, because before then it was just a shambles.
But you didn't really have a proper like rhythm section, did you? Really, in the band prior to Ian?
Oh no, not at all.
And so it did have it had a feeling of like being a bit dirgy. Yeah. Before that, which
I didn't realise how important bass was, I don't think, at the time. And
I think if you're a band and you all get together without playing instruments, so like, you know, like you see bands that get together and they haven't played before, and they say, "Well, what do you want to play?" "Oh, lead guitar." "You want to be the singer?" Yeah. The drummer and the bass are like the sort of like the last things. No one wants to be the drummer or the bass player.
Yeah.
And so, but it is so important, particularly in terms of like driving songs.
Oh yeah. No, it just made all the difference, and that was what the big difference was between our first gig with the Buzzcocks and then the gig at the school, which was like a proper gig. So what did you make of? Let's go through Ian. well, he was a bit older than us when he was 17, so that was actually pushing it a little bit, I thought at the time.
I was thinking about this the other day, and I was thinking, when I first met you, I think I was 14, and then 15 by the time we started gigging. But
I was sure you were 13 in 1976. You were 14.
Yeah,
turned 14.
I can't do the maths, but
history books has it as 13, but
does it
maybe
really?
13
It might have been just. I don't really. It might have been just 13. I don't know. I might have been just almost 14. But
yeah,
when you think about how like the years between like 13 and 17,
yeah,
those years, it's a big proportion of a 13-year-old's life. Those additional years, and he seemed like a completely different generation, really, to me. And I think he kind of also had a very different lifestyle to us, because I think he was at college, wasn't he? And
yeah,
he used to come to rehearsals and gigs, but he never socialized with us, really, did he? Like
he probably also thought we were a little bit too young. I remember when Scabies said you were 13, I thought, and he said, but you're such a great drummer. And I was only like 15, and I'm thinking 13? It's almost 5.
Just a snip of a lad.
But then it didn't make once we met, it didn't make any difference. But with Ian, I always felt a little bit as though he's an older brother that got into quite a few arguments with him about quite a lot of things. I think he probably thought we were all a bit silly. I'm not really sure.
Yeah.
I mean, I spoke with him recently, and for the first time, really properly, and it was really good to talk, actually. And I didn't have that fear of him being the older brother anymore, and it was good fun talking to him. He's nice enough guy. But
I think things like that. I think the age differences as you get older, they don't make any difference at all, do they? But when you're at that age, my age in comparison to him, he would have been feeling quite nervous about hanging out with, someone as young. And I was young, but I also looked really young. I was 13, but I probably looked about 10 or something, didn't I? And I'll freely admit I was completely out of control as well. I just used to muck about all the time.
But I mean, it was having a laugh was always the main thing for me. So I didn't really notice any of that until it was told to me, until Ian would start saying, he's didn't turn up, he was out of it the other night, and blah blah blah. And it was like, I thought, well, so what? But I can see now where if you are trying to be a professional band, how that could impact. And how about Brian? What was your views on Brian? Who basically, I knew Brian, whereas I didn't really know Ian, but Brian I went to school with, and I've known since I was 11, so he's already well established in my life. What did you make of Brian?
I think Brian was like just a bit of a lad, really, a bit of a normal lad, like football.
He loved football.
I could see he was really you and him were like close, but I had the feeling that he was kind of like drawn to similar music to you and similar ideas, but he kind of preferred if you expressed them for him,
Yeah, he was. I mean, he was very much a wingman. So as the way it went, I mean, if I thought of a mad idea like robbing guitars, I probably wouldn't have done it unless I'd said to Brian, "Hey, what do you think about this?" And he'd go, "Yeah, brilliant, let's do it." But in fact, he wasn't quite as brave as he makes out about that guitar robbery, because he stayed very much in the shadows, as me and my brother did. My brother really did most of the hard, heavy lifting on that job.
I bet he was a really fast runner as well.
Brian?
Yeah. from his football training?
Actually, I was the fast runner. I was a faster runner than him. I was the mad as it sounds, for my first year at school, I was the head of, I was the sports captain. I was the captain of the sports team, yeah, because I was a fast runner. But that's about.
But you were probably slowed down by carrying the 2 guitars.
Yeah, when it came to that, I think that the adrenaline, though, that and I was only carrying one of them. Look, he was carrying the other, and it was that I don't even notice getting puffed out over that particular episode. But Brian's dad was also the football trainer at our school. He was like the guy that came to train, and so obviously Brian was in the fucking school team. And although he could play football, I don't think he was, maybe, you know, debatable, and wasn't good enough to be in the football team, and he was only in the football team because of his dad. But yeah, he liked his football. Ian as well, he was mad. Matt still is mad on West Ham, and so they had that in common.
Yeah. I do remember going to see him play football once. I'd come up. I thought I'd come up to do some rehearsing or something. I don't know what it was, and quite often there would be like other things happening, you know, that had to happen first, like, you know, going to see Brian play football or going and running around an allotment, kind of.
That happened a lot.
And then the rehearsal would be like, oh yeah, well maybe we'll do that tomorrow, you know.
Yeah. There was always cider involved as well.
I think that's the thing as well, and that's what made us different to other people. We were still kids in many ways, so we still enjoyed, like, you know, mucking about and running around and doing kind of stupid stuff, you know. Whereas I think the bands that were older than us, they were totally immersed in that whole kind of, you know, we're in a band, you know, and we have to go to the clubs and we have to, you know, live like a kind of like a band member.
Yeah. I think that's why a lot of the other bands, the Damned and Clash and everybody, didn't think of us as kind of adversaries, because we were so obviously on a different universe to them. And we did make it along to a lot of the gigs, though. You know, we might have mucked around and run around the allotments first, but then we'd get the train up to town, and you know, and it didn't feel like an effort to do that. It was like something that, you know, just is part of our job now, is to go and see. When it was just a few punk bands, we'd always go to each other's gigs, and it was quite a cool scene. Did you enjoy that aspect of it?
I think towards the end, I was kind of, I had like a little group of other people that I was socializing with as well. You probably remember them, like Susie and Sally and people like that. And so I would be going to gigs with them as well.
Right.
And they were all involved in the music business. So they would like get really great like tickets and backstage and all that kind of thing. So I
remember that time that Susie came down to one of the rehearsals, and she had some sulfate, and I'd never done speed, or I'd only done acid by then with you.
Only.
And so I was a bit wary of it. I thought, fuck, I don't want to go on another psychedelic fucking hellish experience. And so, but it was all right. And I thought, now looking back on that, I don't know if she was, how old was she? About 20, early 20s or something?
It was in her like early 20s, yeah.
Yeah. If I was in my early 20s, I'm not sure I would have offered speed to a bunch of 14, 15-year-olds somehow, but different time. And you got a little bit, I mean, I was getting slowly kind of into the drugs, the trying out different drugs and seeing what was available and what was good and what wasn't. And I think you were a bit ahead of me with that. And there was a lot of mandrax around at the time. Do you remember?
Yeah, well, there were a couple of people I knew that had prescriptions for it, like dodgy prescriptions. So there was a lot of that. But, you know, I was very, you know, quick to kind of take stuff. So if someone showed me a pill, I'd grab it and eat it, you know, before I even knew what it was. You know, it was kind of, I just kind of like was
see what happens.
Yeah, I feel like I was kind of had an inclination to it, you know, and because it was there was a lot of availability, then probably getting sacked was the right thing, because it meant I didn't have access to some of that sort of stuff, you know, like.
But I think everybody has said since, you know, Ian and Brian, and I agree that the sensible thing would have been to sit down with you and, you know, have like a meeting about all that kind of thing. And unfortunately that didn't happen. That's what pisses me off most about it. It's just like a decision was made and without me even knowing, and then I've got to phone you, and I didn't like that aspect of it. And I think that you probably would, I don't know, maybe you wouldn't have taken any notice, but we might have continued for another 6 months and done a fair bit in that time. But
yeah, I mean, I did have another band afterwards, but that was a disaster.
I remember, yeah. But then you got like, you came round to my place and had that bed sit in Finchley Central, and it was the first time I'd seen you since you left the band, and you, by then you were kind of getting quite into bad drugs, I think. Tell me if I'm wrong, but and your band was called Dirty Works, which is a clue to the direction you were going in.
Although I had no idea what that meant when I joined the band.
Oh, right.
Obviously, I did get to know what it was all about, but
Dirty Works, for anyone that doesn't know, are a syringe that has some contamination in it, and if you have a hit of heroin with just a little bit of dust in it, it can send you on a horrible kind of,
it's like a kind of the worst possible thing.
Cotton fever, they call it, don't they?
Yeah. So I met those people though at Lee Childers' flat.
Right.
He said, "Oh, I've got these really lovely lads for you to meet." You know,
sounds a bit like Jimmy Savile. That voice. Now then, boys.
I went round there with Susie, and she said, "Oh no, they're awful. They're awful. Don't get involved. Don't get involved." But they all look really good. But I realised actually why they all looked kind of like so like really convincing kind of punks. They were really gaunt, you know, and was that they were all really heavily into gear. So we got some.
How old were they?
They were all like 18, 20, 22, that kind of age.
And were they, because I don't remember, I don't know them, so were they on the scene? Were they coming to gigs or?
Yeah, they were really friendly with they used to hang around. They were all from Islington, Holloway, around that way, and they used to hang around the squat where the Slits were rehearsing in the basement. And I think the squat was next door to that guy, Terence Conran's son, that used to work with the Clash. And so my drum kit, I took it and put it in the basement of that squat because that's where we were rehearsing. Right. And I remember walking up to the Vortex, and I think the Slits were playing at the Vortex. And then my drums were like going into the back of this venue, you know. So everybody was using my drum kit, you know, like at this squat, you know, which was interesting. But this guy, can't remember his name, but he had this furniture company in Islington, and he claimed to have invented the beanbag.
Right.
We'll probably be able to find out who he is. Like, he probably got a Wikipedia page now. The beanbag.
Find out who invented the beanbag.
I think it was called Adeptus Furniture, and he had this big like factory on the Dalston Road, and above it was this great big like space, and he said to us, look, here's loads of money, go and buy loads of kit, you know, guitars and all that kind of thing. I'm going to the States on business for like 3 months. When I come back, you know, I want you to have a set ready, and then I'll kind of promote you, you know, as a you know, the next big punk band, you know. But he went off to the States, and every time we went to rehearse, another piece of like this equipment that we bought was missing, you know, and we had really great guitars and great amps and loads of stuff, but it all went every week. Some of it had been sold and kind of like turned into drugs, basically. He came back and he sacked us all, except for me. He took me in to his office and he said, look, the band are rubbish. He said, but if you could find yourself another band, then I would still like help you. And I, out of loyalty to the other blokes, I said, no, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. So that was quite soon after that I thought, oh, I've got to get out of this.
Did you stay in touch with them, any of those guys, afterwards?
The lead singer, Danny, he ended up writing a book about his life, and then the day it was published, he died of a heroin overdose. So
fucking hell. I
can't remember the name of the book. I think it's called The Ghouls of London or something like that. But anyway.
And was it any good? Did it get published?
It is published, yeah.
It wasn't about punk rock or anything like that, I take it.
I think it's actually about his exploits, because he was one of the famous, they used to call them the Rainbow Breakers, where they used to kind of like be able to get into any gig at the Rainbow Theatre. They knew every secret way in, you know, so they went to see all these great bands, you know, for nothing. But he ended up, when I met him when I was in the band, he was doing community service because he broke into the Rainbow and stole some saxophones, and he was like caught like running up the road with these saxophones under his arms. And
you should have got my brother to help out.
So he was, was your brother a Rainbow Breaker as well, was he?
No, he was a guitar thief.
Yeah, of course, yeah. But he was an unwilling guitar thief, really, though, wasn't he?
Well, yeah. He thought he'd get the job as drummer. See, that's a bit of a bummer that a couple of weeks later we met you, and that was the end of his involvement.
But he was doing his community service in Highgate Cemetery, Danny, which was... I remember going to see him there once, and he took me down into this crypt where all the skeletons were like hanging out of the coffins, and they had hair and everything, you know, which...
Fucking hell.
Funny the things you remember.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind looking around that. I'm quite into spooky places. I've got this friend that goes around filming like abandoned funeral homes and in the States that no one's paid subscription, so they've just been left and the bodies are all just still sort of tucked away, but all the air conditioning's been turned off and everything, and it's morbid, but it's quite interesting in a funny sort of way.
Yeah.
So what happened after that? I mean, there's a lot of things I don't know about your journey from then on. So after Dirty Works.
Well, I was expelled from school because I was still like.
You were.
And I remember going back and saying, "Oh, well, you know, all that band stuff's finished now. Can I come back?" And they called the police, I think.
Welcoming arms.
So I went to like the local art school and said, "Look, I haven't got any qualifications or exams. In fact, I haven't been to school for 2 years, but these are some of my paintings and drawings." And it was, I think, I was probably lucky. It wouldn't be able to happen today because the whole of academia now is kind of driven by numbers, isn't it? You know.
Yeah.
So there was this like college dean, Reigate School of Art, who basically just looked at my paintings and he said, right, these aren't too bad. You can come. And like within a couple of months, I was studying art at art school.
I turned 16 just before they managed to get the court order. Anyone, you know, it would be fair to say, well, give him a chance. They've got a record deal and all that. They still kept trying to fucking get my mum into trouble and get me moved to another school right up until I was 16. On the day Outside View came out, in fact. But, so how old were you then when you went to the college?
I was 16 then.
Right.
Yeah. So I was there for 2 years. And then I went to Central School of Art to do a degree, which was uncanny because I used to have my lunch in the place where we played. You know, when we played at Central School of Art with Generation X.
That's Central School of Art, right?
Yeah.
That's quite funny. That was quite a good gig, wasn't it? What I remember of it, it was seeing nothing terrible happened in it.
Yeah, that's when I met Sue Catwoman as well. And that's when she kind of like first saw us, I think.
That was also Generation X's first gig. They were headlining with Durwood and I think Mark Laff, or maybe John Toe was still playing drums then, I'm not sure. Yeah, so was it kind of easy settling back or difficult settling back into not being in a band anymore? How did that go? You know, we had all that excitement quite condensed into that period of time, and then I found it really, when the bubble burst, I found it really fucking difficult, and have ever since, to kind of settle back into trying to be normal now. I
think that probably because I was at art school, I probably didn't feel like I was settling back into normal.
Yeah,
I think things were getting kind of strange, but in a different way, you know. I mean, going to art school is like one of the, I don't think it's like it was, but it did used to be. Like, you get a lot of personal freedom, you know, you get a lot of kind of freedom to do what you want to do. Whereas now it's much more structured. I mean, when I went to Central, literally it was being run by successful artists, and they would just kind of wander around, you know, through your studios and look at your work and then kind of say something profound and then wander off, you know. The rest of the time you were just left to your own devices. And so, you know, within about 2 years of being in, well, less than 2 years, within about 18 months of being in ETA, I was living in London, studying art at Central. I had a flat on the Isle of Dogs. And I was going to gigs and, you know, doing really, having a really interesting kind of life, really. So
what sort of music what gigs were you going to see in those days after punk finished?
It's interesting, actually. You ask now, I can't even remember. I remember getting invited to these like happenings, you know, where you go to some warehouse in, you know, in Limehouse, and then there would be these bands, and you'd never know who they were, you know. But I think one of them was Rip, Rag and Panic.
Rip, Rig and Panic, yeah.
Rip, Rig and Panic, yeah.
I
got the name wrong.
Dave Wright, the sax player, he was in Laura Logic's band from Extra Respect, and then he later played sax with me. Don't know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But yeah, they were quite hip, weren't they? But
I remember I was a bit out of my head when I went to see them, because I did carry on my other pursuits sort of through art school.
Right, okay.
I remember, I remember, like, the thing with art school was that it was great because you had like this central like location in Holborn, you know, where you could just go and hang out all day and you do some art. But then there was like a bar, the same place where we played, you know, where you could go and have a drink, and then and then use that as a base to go out, you know, to other places. So there were always parties, and you know, a lot of the students. Well, it's not like now where people go to university and they go to some sterile kind of halls of residence, and you know, everybody was living in squats and you know, dingy bedsits, and kind of London was very different then. You know, you're talking about when was it, 79, I think 79, 80, when I went to Central, and London was very different, wasn't it then, to how it is now.
Yeah, I went back to college in the early 80s as well, because I didn't take any exams at school. I had to go in. I was, by law, I had to go in for a certain amount of time, and some of those days were exam days, and I would just write fucking nonsense, you know, and I didn't give a shit, because I thought it doesn't matter now, because I'm pop star forever. And then by 2 years later, I thought, well, maybe I need to see if I can get some qualifications, and I went to Hackney College. And as you say, it was, I mean, you could smoke in the lessons and everything. It was fucking great. So
you did a teaching certificate as well, didn't you?
I did, yeah. Well, eventually I did a degree many years later, and then I thought I might as well stay on for another year and do the PGCE, the teachers training thing, which I think everybody thinks that might come in handy one day until they realise what fucking horrible job teaching is. But, yeah. And funny enough, one of my teachers training places that I went to, the teacher used to teach you in, because it soon got out that I used to be in this punk band, Chopped Up Pig's Heads and all that. And he got to hear about that, and he goes, "Oh, do you know Roger Bullen?" And I said, "Yeah, of course." And he was I think he was your art teacher at Red Hill, or what was it, Caterham? Was it Caterham?
Yeah. Who was that?
I can't remember his name. The
art teacher I had at my school was Mr. Niche. He was great.
Mr. Niche. I mean, that could be him. I just really don't remember his name, but I remember being astonished that you know, we'd come across each other through that link. And I asked him if there was any funny stories that he could remember about you, because I was writing my book at the time as well. And he said that once he hit you on the back of the head. Sorry, I can't remember the whole story, but you were mucking about and you wouldn't do what he said, and then he eventually hit you on the back of the head, he said, which wasn't allowed, but he goes, he behaved after that. So, but yeah, he seems
he had a really individual teaching style. He used to come up behind you, look at what you were doing, and say, "Well, not bad for a moron."
Yeah, he was that sort of character. He was quite a funny character. So another thing I want to ask you before I forget is that when we were asked to come to the Roxy to be interviewed by Janet Street Porter, this is what the label told me, that you've got to go to do this interview with Janet Street Porter at the Roxy. And it was after you'd left. And then when we got there, all I remember is that you were already there. You already done an interview with her. So
yeah,
what's the story behind that?
That was audition night at the Roxy, and the band that I was in before Eater, my mum had gotten them a gig on an audition night at the Roxy, so they were there. So I was there to see them. So I didn't know that.
Oh, right.
That London Weekend Television were going to be there, and whether it was a misunderstanding or they just seized the opportunity, they interviewed me thinking I was a member of Eater, I don't know.
Yeah.
But then they came to my house the next day, which was interesting. So I had this great big like London Weekend Television van kind of pull up outside the house, and I think you might have seen it. You know, they had interviewed my great granddad, and and they had like the front of our house was like on national television, and didn't go down well with the neighbours. We ended up having to move because
you got brick through the window or something.
Bricks and pots of paint, thrown through the windows.
Why did everyone hate punks so much? What was the?
I don't know. I think it was like a kind of, the whole idea of being kind of threatened by something. But we kind of encouraged it, didn't we? Because I mean, I was on that national television and they asked me what living in Caterham was like, and I said, well, it's a shithole. So yeah, and this was kind of back in the days, when there weren't a lot of protections as well. I remember there was like a News of the World reporter that interviewed me and my mum, and they literally printed our address, like it was a really negative interview, with like saying kind of really horrible things about us, but they almost kind of invited, the reactions as well,
Oh yeah.
If you want to kind of like vent your anger against these people, this is where they live,
Yeah. But I remember settling down to watch that program thinking, oh, we're going to be on this, and then it was all just you.
Did they interview you then?
I think that we did a little bit. It was like a cursory. Oh, they must have twigged. Oh, but I thought we'd already. All right, we'll ask you a few questions, and then it was all cut out. So
maybe they'd run out of film by then.
Maybe. Yeah. What was that band called? Your first band?
They were called. Well, they weren't called anything, and they said, well, we haven't got a name. What should we call ourselves? And I said, just call yourself Nothing.
Yeah. Because that guy who played bass, Paul Flint.
Yeah.
We actually tried to audition him first, didn't we, before Ian?
Yeah, because I think you said we need a bass player, and I said, well, I've got a friend, Paul, who can play bass, but I think his parents said, no, you can't do it. I think he was keen on it. He was keen on the idea.
When I met him later, he said that we all turned up at his place and spoke to his family. I don't remember that. Do you remember that?
I don't remember that, no. But it possibly could have happened, but I don't remember it. But, I remember you and Brian coming down to stay at my house once.
Yeah, I came down on my own a couple of times, or at least once.
Yeah.
I remember one time we went from my house, we went back to your place in Caterham, and we bunked the trains, of course, as you do. But you got caught at Caterham, and they took me and you into this room. But I must have had a ticket because they weren't interested in me. And took all the information, and I thought, oh no, this is serious. Did you ever get any fine or anything from that?
No.
Did you ever end up with any criminal convictions by the end of ETA?
No.
You can get away with a lot when you're a kid, can't you?
That bunking the train thing was really funny. You just basically would run and jump over the barrier, and if anyone was brave enough to kind of grab you, then
they never would. The refrain that would always go as soon as you ask for a ticket and you think, oh shit, and then you've got to run. There was always young man. It was like them calling you back. That's about as bad as it ever got. They didn't bother. Really.
I remember trying to get off once coming up to see you, and I bunked the tube, and what's your station? Finchley Manor, wasn't it?
Woodside Park.
Woodside Park, yeah. And it's kind of right up the end of the line, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I got off, and there was just me, and I thought, oh shit, I can't kind of like secret myself through the barrier, there's a black guy standing there. I'm the only person getting off the train. So I pretended I was French.
As you do.
And I didn't understand that I needed a ticket. And that's how I got through.
Yeah, I never had any trouble. I mean, getting a train ticket was just like, why would you want to spend money that you can spend on other things on the train? It just didn't. very rarely.
I think everyone I knew did it. Everybody I knew did it. I remember coming up to London with Rat and Captain Sensible, and they were doing it as well, and they were like making money, you know. And
yeah, they were growing up and still doing it. In fact, you were just allowed to, just like paedophilia was allowed, train bunking was allowed in the 70s.
Yeah, there's a whole list of things which were allowed in the 70s,
yeah,
which now aren't allowed.
It's a lot.
Some more worrying than others.
It's a lot harder these days to bunk the trains. It's not even worth trying. And I think as an adult, you're less likely to get away with it with a, you know, slap around the ear kind of thing.
No.
But yeah. Do you remember that gig that we did? Like, so we then lost touch after that. After you just joined the Dirty Works or whatever that setup was, and then I met you briefly just shortly after that, and this is when I was getting really, you know, disappointed with the way it was going, and didn't like the direction, and so I was kind of a little bit envious of you that you got out of it at that stage, and then I never saw you again after that, and I never even knew before the internet and all of that, I didn't know how to get in touch anyway, and so it wasn't until the early 2000s, I think maybe 2000, that I got an email from some Australian music writer of some sort who said that she had interviewed you and that she wanted to put us in touch. And then, so we then got in touch again. And we then did a couple of gigs as well. We did that thing at Boogaloo's, remember, which was a kind of my book launch gig.
That was so funny.
And you were playing tablers, or not tablers, was it tablers? What were you playing? You tell us.
Congas.
Congas.
Yeah. I remember you, because the pub was very Irish, wasn't it? And for some reason you decided to have a go about Bono.
Yeah. And Bob Geldof. They said
any famous Irishman that you could kind of conjure up, you were.
But they
launched into a polemic against them, and then someone in the audience said, kind of like, "Hold on."
Yeah, but they cut the mic after that. That was the end of the set.
The landlord. I think that was Shane McGowan owned that pub, or had a share in it, or something.
That's right. Yeah. And then he said to me afterwards, he said, "I don't mind you slagging off Bob Geldof." He goes, "But when it comes to Bono, steer clear." I don't know why their allegiance to Bono was so strong in the Irish community then. But,
I think we were quite surprised at how many people turned up for that.
Yeah, it was good. It was a good crowd.
But there were people as well, people from, I remember like TV Smith was there and people like that, you know, who you kind of like think, well, you know, he was obviously interested to see what we were doing, you know. And
then, do you remember Adrian Heath, who was a sort of school friend of mine, who then started coming to gigs and stuff like that? And he was like a really manic guy, if you remember. He was really manic, would be the good way to describe him. And he went on to manage Sisters of Mercy for a while and got involved in the management side of things. And then he came to that. He came to the Boogaloo gig, which is the first time I've seen him as well for decades. And it's quite fun to be reacquainted with him. And we stayed in touch by email for a little while. And then in 2000 and sort of about 5, 6 years later, I got a call saying that he'd killed himself.
Oh, right.
That's what happened to Adrian Heath. He was Phil Rowland's neighbour, in fact. Adrian was, and I could never work that out because he still seemed manic, but he seemed quite enthusiastic about life, and I can never work it out when that happens. You know, when the last time you see someone, they seemed fine, and then to be so drastic as to do that. But yeah.
Well, I think it's one of those things about depression is that it's often something you suffer on your own, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
and you carry on and you make the best of your kind of your life away from it. But you know, you're always confronted by that, like that feeling, you know, that I think you know, to kill yourself, you have to have lost all hope, don't you, really?
Yeah. I mean, I've been at low stages one time in particular that, you know, the thought crosses your mind, but then it just seems so kind of, I'm a bit too optimistic, you know, my character to think, oh no, this is it now, this is the end, and it just seems such a big step to take. And
I think if you look back as well, you know, you kind of think, well, if I had made that decision, then I wouldn't have done this and I wouldn't have done that.
exactly. Well, that's the way I feel about, you know, because my divorce was probably, I mean, out of all the things that have happened to me in my life, there's been some pretty rough things. The divorce was the thing that affected me the most, because I had 2 young kids and a seemingly happy family that was there one minute and then fucking gone the next. And to make it, compound it and make it worse, is my best mate, who's, you know, was the guy I introduced into ETA in the first place, who made this happen. And it was, I just couldn't figure out why, you know, why he would do that or how this happened, and it was a very, very depressing time. But as I say, there's always, like, I always have a slight sense of optimism that this is all kind of, everything is temporary. I'm quite philosophical about life, and so I have to say that maybe there are some good things that came out of being divorced that, you know, wouldn't have happened if I stayed in a comfortable kind of situation, family sort of situation. But it's still, you know, once those things wound you, the wound doesn't go away, and that was definitely the worst thing. What would you say on this cheery subject? What's the worst thing that's ever happened to you?
What's the worst thing that's ever happened to me? Well, I mean, there's a few things, but you know, I lost my mum sort of the last year of lockdown. Right. And I was really, really close to my mum, you know.
Yeah, I know. And sorry to hear that as well.
She lived down in Wales all on her own, and she was living this like life that she really wanted to live, you know, like in the middle of the countryside, and she had like goats, but obviously as she got older, she could do less and less of that kind of thing.
How old was she in 2020 or whatever it was?
She was only 78.
Only? That's not bad.
Yeah. But she was really ill, and she was ill for a long time. And to begin with, there were a lot of restrictions because it was still the tail end of COVID. So she was in hospital, and I could only come and go and see her when they said I could, you know. I couldn't go any other time, and they would ring and say, oh, can you come, you know. And so it was drawn out. It was like kind of like over 70 days in intensive care. So that was really, really traumatic. And she'd moved up to be close to me as well. So we'd sold her house in Wales, and she'd bought a little house a couple of miles away from us, you know. Then we had lockdown, which meant, you know, it was limited. The idea was her coming up, and we would be able to spend more time together, and I would be able to kind of be around more. Wow. And then she got ill, you know. So I think she was up here for like 4 years.
What happened to the goats and everything?
They were gone a while. I have inherited her dog though. Look.
All right, he's still around.
Yeah, she was very young. She was a rescue dog.
What's his name?
She's called Lulu.
Lulu. All right. I know another dog called Lulu.
Yeah.
She looks like a Lulu.
The other ones that you met, I haven't got them anymore. They've passed away. But remember, you quite taken with Betsy, my little.
Betsy was lovely. Yeah, I remember.
Yeah. She was up on your lap, wasn't she? And
Betsy was great.
Yeah, she died earlier this year.
I know. I'm sorry to hear that as well. And you had another tragic incident with when your sister died in very young, too young.
She was 27. Yeah, she died. She of a heroin overdose.
Yeah. Caroline she was on the cover of Problem Child, wasn't she? The damn.
She was, yeah, that famous photo shoot. Yeah.
Yeah.
And she was really into it, into the scene and everything, come to all the gigs and everything. But she had like a real battle with drugs, like over years and years and years. And ironically, and probably
was her drug taking separate to your life?
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, she was mixing in a completely different circle to me. But just, I think there were a lot of drugs around that time. But and I know there are now, but it's a different kind of scene. You know, it's a very different sort of scene to it is now.
Around the early 80s, a lot of heroin was suddenly on the market. I mean, I got into it as well. And Nick Holmes, remember Nick Holmes, our roadie?
Yeah, I know he died. Yeah,
he's another one that went that route. And,
but I mean, that was really traumatic, and I was a social worker in Croydon, and she lived in Croydon, and I had to go and identify her and everything, you know, which was pretty traumatic. And it's compounded all of that because your relationship suffers as a result of not being able to kind of like relate to each other normally, because you can't invite her around to your house because everything goes missing, you know. And it's that kind of you get to a point where you kind of distance yourself, and then something like that happens.
That must have really affected you guys at the time. How was your mum? She must have been pretty distraught.
Yeah, she was really distraught. But anyway, it's not very uplifting, is it?
No, let's change the subject. So after that Boogaloo gig, we were then Dinosaur Jr. offered us quite a lot of money to do a gig at some festival called All Tomorrow's Parties.
That's right.
And that's one of my favourite gigs of all time, because that was a lovely crowd. Like, it was all, there weren't even Eater fans really. There were probably only a couple of people had heard of us, but went down really well, and it was just a really nice, fun festival to do. And we were given that chalet, and
it was probably the best thing that we did ever as Eater, really.
Yeah, I think it's one of my definitely all-time favourite gigs, that one.
Because I remember when we used to do gigs, we would like have to go to the venue in a taxi with like my drum kit kind of on my lap, you know, and set up ourselves, and you know, we used to have to put a lot of effort in, and then that thing felt like perhaps what it should have been like. You know, we just turned up and they gave us a chalet, and we opened the fridge and there was like bottles of wine and you know, case of beer and nice tray of sandwiches and everything, you know, and you kind of like, what is going on? And it was kind of like odd as well, because me and you are probably from the generation where like going on holiday to Pontins was kind of quite a normal thing, you know. Going on holiday to a chalet.
It was Butlins or Pontins, I can't remember what it was, but it was one of those
Pontins, I think. Could have been Butlins. They're next door to each other.
Where was it? It was in
Camber Sands.
Camber Sands, right. That's it. But that was fantastic. And then it was fun hanging around with you, because I'm not really, you know, knocked about with you properly for a long period of time, for ages. And it was great doing the we were wandering around checking out other bands and taking the piss out of people. And remember that guy eating pizza? I always remember that guy eating pizza, and he was really spotty. And either you or I said something about pizza face, which seems very funny at the time.
It reverted back to our.
Oh, definitely. It was like instantly back into just mucking around again. And I drunk so much that I was at that stage where you think, well, if you're just on 10 pints of Guinness for the rest of the night, then that's being sensible now, you know.
We went. I think we were in another. Somebody who was playing on a harp, and
oh well.
She asked for the bar to be closed, and I think they didn't go down very well with you. You became a heckler.
Yeah, I called her a name, which I'm not going to repeat now. It was funny at the time.
Yeah. But then we ended up going to a party, didn't we, with the guy from Dinosaur Jr., didn't we?
Yeah. I vaguely remember. I remember him. One of E33's his all-time favorite band, and I'd never met him before, so I didn't know what he was like or how he spoke or anything, and I didn't know that he's monosyllabic. How do you pronounce that?
Monosyllabic, yeah.
Monosyllabic, and he doesn't say a lot. He's not a few.
He just kept looking at you and saying, "Oh wow, oh wow, no, I'm so stoked. I'm so stoked."
Stoked. And there's another expression like stoked, he kept saying. But yeah, he was, and I couldn't work it. I thought maybe he's not really that into us, and this is a real letdown having met us. But apparently, according to his friends, who's told us this is the most animated they've ever seen Jay. And I thought, fucking hell.
Yeah. They say though that it's best not to meet your heroes, isn't it?
Yeah. But I've stayed sort of mates with him, and I've done other gigs with him since, and so that in this case turned out to be not the case. I think if he was my hero and he had been so kind of difficult to fucking talk to, then
What do you mean, like when you met Lou Reed?
Well, he was a little bit. He was better than that. He was a little bit more kind of chatty. I wouldn't put him on the same level as Jay.
Those photographs,
do you remember that?
Those photographs of us meeting Lou Reed in Dingwalls are kind of funny.
There's you behind going like pulling faces. I don't think you took it quite as seriously as I took. Meeting Lou Reed is God, but if it had been Gary Glitter, maybe you would have been a bit more kind of arse licking like I was. Gary would have liked.
Country got a good image.
No, it's not. Scrap that.
Fool's World.